The National Desk, America's News, now.
Fulton County DA Fani Willis can stay on the Trump election interference case in Georgia, but there's a catch. We'll break down the details. Then Israel is moving forward with plans to invade the last Hamas stronghold left in Gaza, what the U.S. is now calling for from Prime Minister Netanyahu.
We're working intensively with Israel, with Qatar, with Egypt, to bridge the remaining gaps and to try to reach an agreement.
Then Americans could soon have the power to pay less when buying a home. The major change to realtor fees that could be coming. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. A very happy Friday to you. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and more than 15 million people from Texas to South Carolina are at risk for severe thunderstorms that could lead to tornadoes, large hail, flooding, and damaging winds. Certain parts of the Mid-South and South Central Texas areas are at highest risk. It comes as Indiana and Ohio residents are still cleaning up after devastating tornadoes swept through the states yesterday, killing at least 3 people and damaging dozens of buildings. The National Desk, Mike McCarthy, reports from Indian Lake, Ohio.
A secondary search of Orchard Island got underway after sunup this morning with dogs, heavy machinery, and more. The Washington Township Police Chief told us overnight they got to as many homes as they could. But today we learned some spots weren't able to be reached because of downed lines, gas leaks, and other potential dangers. The search has postponed when Brian Bell can check on his property. He's been through several tornadoes already and said this is some of the worst damage he's seen.
Oh, Lord, I'm walking through here. This is terrible.
He said it'd probably be later tonight.
But it's a strong community. They all pitch in. Everybody have it back together, hopefully by summer. It's going to take a long time, though, with all the wreckage we've seen.
Spend a Day Marina suffered major damage. This morning, the priority was securing the building. A manager told me it was too soon to know what the next steps are for the business beyond that at this point.
Developing now, New Mexico police have issued this photo of a suspect who they say shot and killed an officer today on Interstate 40. The suspect is at large and is considered armed and dangerous. Details of the incident are limited at this time, but of course we will continue to follow this story for any updates. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis has accepted the resignation of Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade and praised him for being brave enough to step forward to take on the investigation. She said he had the courage to take the role even though he didn't seek it. This while former President Donald Trump celebrated the resignation on Truth Social, writing in part, the Fani Willis lover, Mr. Nathan Wade Esquire, has just resigned in disgrace. It comes after the judge ruled that Willis must either step aside or remove Wade in response to conflict of interest allegations. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has more on the decision.
District Attorney Fani Willis getting a partial win. She will remain on the election subversion case against former President Trump and more than a dozen co-defendants because her lead prosecutor, and as we now know, former boyfriend Nathan Wade, is stepping down.
It's a surprising decision. I think it may be a wise decision. Probably each side will be a little frustrated. The judge did split the baby.
Trump and his fellow defendants argued Willis and Wade have a conflict of interest due to their romantic relationship Wade and Willis said ended last year and would benefit financially from their work on the case, a claim Willis adamantly denied in court.
I think you lied right here. No. This is the truth, Judge. And it is a lie.
Judge McAfee says the defense did not provide sufficient evidence that Willis acquired a personal stake in the prosecution or that her financial arrangements had any impact on the case, but says the appearance of impropriety requires either Willis or Wade to step down. The choice is obvious. If it were Willis, the case would essentially come to a halt. Judge McAfee says Willis had a tremendous lapse in judgment and during the evidentiary hearings displayed an unprofessional manner.
It certainly doesn't look good for her and for her office the way this whole thing has been handled.
Expected to file an appeal, Trump's attorney Steve Sato says we will use all legal options available as we continue to fight to end this case, which should never have been brought in the first place. Now that Wade will be removed from the case, do Trump and his fellow defendants have any argument that that conflict still exists?
I think this decision will just stand. I think the judge, kind of within his discretion, made a wise decision. Fonnie Willis had earlier talked about an August 2024 trial date. I think that's highly unlikely. I think the appeal of this decision could potentially slow it down.
It's a case that now has 35 charges instead of 41. Judge McAfee dismissing 6 of them earlier this week, 3 of which were against Trump, who still faces 10 charges in Georgia. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nishar reporting.
Donald Trump's hush money criminal trial is now delayed for 30 days. New York prosecutors say they expect to get another 15,000 pages of possible evidence in the case. The delay allows the former president's lawyers more time to sift through those documents. They wanted a 90-day delay, but the judge settled with 30. The trial was originally set for March 25th. The search continues for University of Missouri college student Riley Strain. He walked out of a Broadway bar in Nashville last Friday night. He disappeared a short time later. Crews have been climbing down embankments and searching the Cumberland River near a homeless encampment where Strain was last known to have been seen. Detectives are also searching through any gaps in surveillance footage. Connecticut State Police Trooper Brian North has been acquitted of all charges in the death of college student Mubarak Suleiman. In 2020, North shot into the stolen car that Suleiman was driving after a car chase, testifying later that Suleiman had pulled out a knife. Suleiman's family said he had mental illness. North could have faced 40 years in prison. Uber and Lyft plan to stop operating in Minneapolis on May 1st. It comes after the city council overrode the mayor's veto of a minimum wage for rideshare workers, mandating that drivers get paid $15.57 an hour. Uber said the bill would eliminate 10,000 jobs, and Lyft said it was deeply flawed. The mayor is calling on politicians to come up with a solution before May 1st. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has approved military plans for a ground offensive inside Rafah, the last Hamas stronghold left in Gaza. The majority of civilians have been taking refuge in the city that borders Egypt during the 5-month war. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who is in Austria today, urged Israel again to put civilian life first while making their wartime decisions.
President Biden has been very clear that given the large number of civilians in Rafah, about 1.4 million, many of whom, as the foreign minister said, have been displaced from other parts of Gaza, we have to see a clear and implementable plan, not only to get civilians out of harm's way, but also to make sure that once out of harm's way, they're appropriately cared for with shelter, with food, with medicine, with clothing, and we've not yet seen such a plan.
This comes as Hamas presented a ceasefire counterproposal to negotiators last night, but Israel said their offer was based on unrealistic demands and rejected it. Secretary Blinken remains optimistic a deal can be achieved.
Israel has sent back a negotiating team to pursue this, and I think it reflects the sense both of possibility and of urgency to get an agreement, to get a ceasefire, to get the hostages back, to get even more humanitarian assistance in.
Meantime, the United States and allies are warning Iran if it moves forward with a ballistic missile deal with Russia, the country will face sanctions. U.S. officials haven't confirmed any movement of missiles from Iran to Russia, but Iranian officials suggest a deal is imminent. Associated Press sources say one action the group of 7 nations is considering is prohibiting the country's national air carrier, Iran Air, from flying to Europe. More than 1,000 drones are crossing over from Mexico to the U.S. every month, according to Air Force General Gregory Guillo. During a Senate hearing yesterday, he said this is posing a growing potential threat to national security. U.S. officials say Mexican cartels use drones for surveillance to help them smuggle people and drugs. A Supreme Court ruling outlines when public officials can be sued for blocking critics on social media. Under the new standard, an official is deemed a state actor online if they, quote, possessed actual authority to speak on behalf of the state on a particular matter and purported to exercise that authority in the relevant posts. In that case, they could face litigation if they block or mute someone. Coming up next here on the National Desk, the major change that could lead to lower fees for people looking to buy a home. Then former college swimmer Riley Gaines and 15 others sued the NCAA for letting biological men compete in women's events. How the organization is responding. Then later on, several people have died because of lithium-ion batteries used in e-scooters. Why they can be dangerous and what's being done about it. That's when we come back. Welcome back. A landmark settlement could reshape the way houses are bought and sold. The National Association of Realtors has agreed to a $418 million settlement to end the previously accepted 6% broker's fee split between the buying and the selling realtors. Now, under this new agreement, if agreed upon the court, home buyers and sellers would be able to negotiate fees with their realtor if they still choose to use one. A federal jury ruled against NAR, ordering $1.78 billion in damages last November for colluding to inflate commission fees for realtors. The House of Representatives wants a ByteDance to sell TikTok, but China is almost certain to refuse. China considers the video sharing app's algorithm that TikTok can't function without a homegrown technology and important for its national security. But the Senate isn't totally behind the bipartisan bill. National correspondent Janae Bowens has a look at the controversy.
A TikTok ban bill seemed like it was on the fast track to becoming law, but it slowed down in the Senate as a wide variety of concerns are surfacing.
Not only 5 million small businesses rely on it, but 170 million people rely on this app for more than just their livelihood. They rely on this app for their mental health.
The concerns go beyond those of the users and creators.
If the company is banned or you say it can't have the current ownership and the company goes away, you're basically taking their First Amendment rights away with them also.
The hesitancy is bipartisan, with Democratic Senators Catherine Cortez Masto and Jackie Rosen still reviewing the proposal. And businessman Elon Musk posted on X, "This censorship bill is far too broad. It will be abused in the future." There are also various questions, including whether it has legal standing on an international scale, if TikTok can sue, and how the legislation would impact other foreign adversary-controlled applications.
If this bill passes, nothing is actually going to happen for years because it has some really glaring weaknesses that TikTok's lawyers are going to be able to exploit.
TikTok CEO Shu Chu was on Capitol Hill this week, pleading with senators to not pass the bill.
There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I intend to clarify it. There's a lot of noise, but I haven't heard, exactly what we've done this week.
The NCAA is pushing back against a lawsuit brought by 16 female college athletes saying college sports are the premier stage for women's sports in America. And while the NCAA does not comment on pending litigation, the association and its members will continue to promote Title IX, make unprecedented investments in women's sports, and ensure fair competition in all NCAA championships. Former college swimmer turned activist Riley Gaines and 15 other college athletes filed a lawsuit against the NCAA for allowing biological men to compete in women's college swimming events. The suit alleges that the NCAA allowing transgender swimmer Leah Thomas to compete in competitions violated Title IX. The class action suit also named the University System of Georgia, which includes Georgia Tech, for hosting the 2022 NCAA Swimming Championship. McDonald's says it's working to fix a system outage across the globe that started overnight. Many restaurants in the U.S., Australia, the U.K., Japan, and China have been unable to take payments and receive orders. Some locations are back up and running after having closed earlier today. The company said the issue was not due to a cyber attack. A health alert. There have now been at least 59 confirmed or suspected measles cases in the U.S. this year in 17 states. That's more than the total for last year. The CDC says most of the cases have been connected to unvaccinated Americans bringing the virus back after traveling abroad. Illinois has some of the most cases recently, many of them at a migrant shelter. A blood test to detect colon cancer is about as accurate as stool tests that are used as alternatives to colonoscopies. That's according to a new study in the New England Journal of Medicine. It found the test accurately detected colon cancer in 83% of those with the disease who were at average risk and asymptomatic. However, it had a 10% false positive rate. The number of kids under 5 years old who accidentally ingest melatonin in gummies and tablets has sharply increased in the last 2 decades. According to CDC data, there was a 530% uptick in calls to poison centers for pediatric melatonin exposures from 2012 to 2021. There was also a 420% rise in emergency visits for that reason from 2019 to 2022. Most kids exposed to melatonin don't need hospitalization. If severe symptoms arise, doctors say there may be contamination in the product. Looking ahead, with a total solar eclipse less than a month away, communities across the country are gearing up for a surge in tourism. In Texas, at least 2 counties have already declared disaster declarations in anticipation of an influx in visitors. This includes Kendall County, which is expected to see its population double during the eclipse. Meantime, San Antonio and the city of Bernie are developing contingency plans in case the surge disrupts cell services.
Just when you have a really concentrated area of people using the same cell tower, there could be some disruption, especially for those that use cellular data.
Officials are also urging local businesses to form backup plans in case ATMs or card readers are affected. The total eclipse will cut across the U.S. from Texas through northern New England, but other areas across the country will be able to see a blackout of some level. Almost the entire continental United States will see at least a partial eclipse. No matter where you are, though, always be sure to never look at the sun, even in a full eclipse, without proper specially made sunglasses that can filter out UV light. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
Empty shrimp boats crowd the dock near the port of Port Arthur.
Well, in the last year or so, we've been inundated with a lot of farm-raised shrimp that comes from Ecuador, India, Thailand, Argentina, throughout the world.
Imported farm-raised shrimp has plagued local shrimpers for more than 20 years, and even more so in the last year and a half.
The prices that they're getting at the dock are more like 75 cents as opposed to $2.50 or $3 a pound, which they were getting only 18 months ago.
Our goal really is to help people to get better faster.
Dr. Noah Phillip is the lead for mental health research at the Providence VA. He explains those who've served in a war zone learn to survive in a hostile environment.
The challenge is that when they come home, they've learned that these things can be dangerous.
So they developed this virtual reality war zone.
We worked with veterans directly and say, like, okay, tell me what are the things that you have seen when you're overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Then this research team combined it with a device that offers pain-free, low electrical brain stimulation.
Trying to get energy into this part of the brain here, which is involved in helping people learn that things can be safe.
From December to now, the number of people crossing the border into Texas has dropped significantly. Here's Governor Greg Abbott talking about Brownsville.
There were thousands of people coming across the border. Now there is, on average, about 14 people.
But the question several experts are asking is, will it last? These are all the border encounters over the last few years. Now, as you see right here in the spring months, every year there's an increase.
So we're already starting to see that surge up again here in Texas.
Are we more prepared for that now than the surge we saw in December?
I think this trend is just going to continue to bust out the seams.
Coming up next here, as the popularity of e-scooters has increased, so has the frequency of fires associated with them, what the government has and has not done to address the problem. We'll be right back. Spotlight on America has been tracking the newly documented rise of fires from e-scooters and lithium-ion batteries and discovered there is very little being done nationwide to curb the risks. Spotlight on America correspondent Chris Daniels traveled to San Francisco to find out what this city is doing in the absence of federal intervention.
They've become ubiquitous, from major cities to the suburbs. Scooter use that is blowing up. Quite literally. As Spotlight on America has reported, e-scooters and many micro-mobility devices are part of a dangerous trend.
When they burn hot. They can't be put out by fire extinguishers.
Aaron Peskin is the president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors.
Isn't there a risk here with people that they take them home and put them in front of their front door?
There have been countless tragedies.
Multiple deaths and fires are connected to e-scooters in just the last few years, while the feds have spun their wheels on regulation.
Why hasn't the government cracked down on how they're used and where they're stored?
People are getting replacement batteries off of e-commerce platforms that are cheaply made and really are dangerous.
Alexander Hohnsark is the chair of the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission. The agency told Spotlight on America the CPSC has only issued 10 recalls of the devices, and with no federal standard governing the safety of the batteries.
It seems like when you have a threat like that and you have something that has caused damage and caused deaths, that there is action right away. What the heck has taken so long?
When we see a problem, we go out there and we look at the specific products that are causing the problems and look to get them recalled if there was a defect out there.
Congress has floated legislation that would require the CPSC to set standards, but nothing has passed.
When Congress steps in, they cut through a lot of the red tape, and we can do things faster and more efficiently.
Poorly manufactured and poorly handled lithium-ion batteries are ticking time bombs in American homes and businesses.
New York Congressman Richie Torres has been pushing for legislative intervention, with fire officials pleading for action at a recent hearing in Congress.
Ultimately, there's no substitute for federal legislation.
Yeah, so we really need that legislation enacted.
But in the absence of that, it falls to local government officials like myself and my colleagues.
That is why San Francisco approved a bill last month to limit storage of mobility devices and the use and sale of damaged lithium-ion batteries. New York City has also taken action, and Seattle is talking about legislation.
We're trying to get our hands around it as best we can. It's not perfect. It's the best we can do.
Until then, the danger will still hover at the surface as America continues to move along. In San Francisco, I'm Chris Daniels for Spotlight on America.
Coming up next, one of the NFL's best players has retired. A look back at Aaron Donald's career when we come back. One of the NFL's greatest players decided to call it a career today. Aaron Donald of the Los Angeles Rams retires after 10 seasons and is in the conversation as the best defensive player ever. The Rams' all-time leading sack leader, Donald, joins Barry Sanders as the only player to ever make the NFL Pro Bowl every year of their career, playing at least 10 seasons. He was a three-time Defensive Player of the Year, tying all-time greats Lawrence Taylor and J.J. Watt for the most ever. Won the Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2014 and was instrumental and irreplaceable in the Rams' Super Bowl run through the playoffs in 2022. What a career. And that is going to do it for us for this edition of the National Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. Just check our local listings. I'm Dee Dee Gatton here in Washington. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tonight.